It's hard to overestimate the destructive power of fire. Almost daily, we see news stories about forests, homes, vehicles, and businesses destroyed by fire. Sadly, some of these stories include the loss of life. Workplaces, of course, are not exempt. The National Fire Protection Association documented almost 43,000 reported fires at industrial and manufacturing facilities over a span of 5 years. Fires that cost U.S. employers over $900 million. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, workplace fires and explosions caused, on average, 161 deaths annually over a 10-year period. Clearly, a fire in the workplace can have tragic consequences. That's why the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, has published standards to regulate several aspects of fire prevention and response. Most of us received some type of fire safety training as kids. We were told never to play with matches, and at school, we participated in fire drills, marching out of the school building in single file and waiting for the all clear signal before returning to class. Just like in schools, in workplaces, preventing fires and responding effectively when a fire occurs should be a high priority. That's why OSHA requires employers to address fire prevention and emergency action planning, including employee training, firefighting equipment, and evacuation plans in the event of a workplace fire. For the rest of this training program, we'll address the dangers of fire, fire prevention basics, and specific approaches to preventing fires from hot work, chemicals, flammable liquids, and compressed gases. We'll also talk about your responsibilities, which include taking part in fire prevention and response training, participating in fire drills, following safe work practices to prevent fires, and knowing your company's emergency response procedures. So, let's get started. Make no mistake, fire is dangerous. It produces toxic gases, releases hazardous materials, and can provide an ignition source for explosions. Fire will also produce life-threatening heat. It can cause structural damage, both seen and unseen, that can block exit routes or cause walls and roofs to collapse. And it can spread fast. Depending on conditions, a small flame can become a major fire in as little as 30 seconds, producing deadly toxic smoke and so much heat that simply breathing can scorch your lungs. A fire can double in size every 30 to 60 seconds based on fire load. In order to prevent fires and respond effectively in an active fire situation, you must have specialized knowledge. That's why part of the OSHA standard is employee training. If you understand fire prevention and response, you have a much better chance of avoiding fire altogether or escaping safely if one should occur in your workplace. Because once a fire is underway, rapid evacuation is the surest way to prevent injury or loss of life. To take an active role in preventing fires, it's useful to understand the components that make fire possible. These components are often referred to as the fire tetrahedron. The 4 components represented by the 4-sided tetrahedron are oxygen, heat, fuel, and chemical chain reaction. Without each of these 4 elements, fire cannot begin or continue. For example, if you don't allow heat to come into contact with the materials that could provide fuel, you'll prevent fire. Or if you use an extinguishing agent that stops the chemical chain reaction that keeps a fire going, you'll put out the fire. Let's consider some examples. Identifying heat or potential ignition sources in industrial or manufacturing facilities is not difficult. The heat or ignition source for a fire could come from an electrical source, from smoking, from hot work, or from cooking. I'm sure you can think of many possible sources of heat or ignition in your own work area. Oxygen, of course, is present in the air we breathe, but it may also be used in certain industrial processes. If this is the case in your workplace, the fire danger is multiplied, and the spread of fire can be accelerated dramatically. Given enough heat and oxygen, almost anything will burn, but some fuel sources ignite easier than others. Off the top of your head, you can probably provide a fairly extensive list of potential fuel in your workplace. We'll talk about some specific examples later on. Of course, once the chemical chain reaction of fire is started, extinguishing the fire requires that you interrupt that chain reaction. Think of denying the fire one of the other components: oxygen, fuel, or heat. In another part of this training program, we'll talk about the various types of fire extinguishers that are available to stop a fire's chain reaction. One of the most important strategies for preventing fire and mounting an effective response if a fire occurs is good housekeeping. Regularly remove trash using proper disposal methods. Discard rags used with flammable liquids in an approved container. Never pour flammable liquids down a drain. Follow your facility's procedures to collect flammable liquids for proper disposal. Keep work areas free of dust, lint, sawdust, and scraps. These are all important methods of controlling fire hazards. And speaking of dust, fine particles of suspended dust can represent a significant explosion hazard. Combustible dust can build up in confined areas, such as the space above a drop ceiling or in ventilation ducts. If something happens to suspend the dust in the air, a single spark can cause a rapid and explosive chain reaction. OSHA indicates that dust buildup of just 1/32 of an inch over a significant area can be hazardous. If your work generates combustible dust, it's critical that you understand the dangers and follow all guidelines for preventing and controlling combustible dust fires. Since production machinery and tools are often the source of heat or ignition for workplace fires, it's important to keep equipment in good working order. Inspect wiring and appliances regularly. Any heat-producing tools or appliances should be monitored closely. Keep motors and machine tools free of dust and grease. Avoid using extension cords and don't overload circuits. When not in use, power down electrical equipment. And wherever possible, non-flammable cleaning products should be used. If flammable cleaning agents are present, take extra care to follow fire safety precautions. Any chemical spills should be reported and cleaned up immediately by employees with appropriate training. And make sure to properly store all flammable liquids and solvents in a flammables cabinet or in a specially designed storage room. Obviously, a no smoking policy must be established and enforced. Employees should only smoke in designated areas and should completely extinguish cigarette and cigar butts before disposing of them in an approved way. If you maintain or refuel forklifts or other powered equipment in the workplace, it should be done in a well-ventilated area where fire safety precautions are followed and appropriate fire extinguishers are easily accessible. It's obvious that diesel and propane are flammable, but even recharging a battery gives off dangerous hydrogen gas or may create an ignition spark. Again, any spill should be cleaned up immediately before fuels have a chance to vaporize and become a fire hazard. Good housekeeping also plays an important role in fire response plans. Exit routes and the areas around fire alarms and fire extinguishers must be kept clear. Similarly, areas around sprinkler systems, fire detection systems, alarm systems, and firefighting equipment should be kept clear as well. And speaking of alarm and detection systems, part of your company's fire emergency action plan should include regular testing of fire detection equipment, alarms, and emergency lighting, along with regular fire drills and fire safety training for all employees. All employees must participate in fire drills. Hot work, such as welding, cutting, soldering, brazing, or grinding, should be performed in an area that is kept clean and free from combustible materials. Areas designated for this type of work are usually designed with fire prevention in mind. But when hot work takes place outside of designated areas, a hot work permit must be issued, and someone designated as a fire watch must be ready with a fire extinguisher during the job. If possible, any combustible materials should be removed from the area. Combustible materials that can't be removed are to be protected by tarps and screens. Everyone working nearby should be notified to stay clear of the hot work area, and the fire watch must be maintained in the area for at least 30 minutes after the hot work is completed. As we've seen, any fire can be dangerous. Chemical fires can be even more so. Depending on the chemicals involved, these fires can grow exceptionally fast and may rapidly lead to extreme heat or explosions. Furthermore, the inherent hazards of chemicals such as toxicity, flammability, or reactivity can be made worse by the presence of fire. Inhaling the fumes of a chemical fire may lead to lung damage or death. The best protection is prevention, which is based on your knowledge of the chemicals in your work area. Your employer must have safety data sheets for every chemical used in your workplace readily accessible for you to review. Safety data sheets can help you learn about the hazards, including flammability, of any chemicals you use on the job. Proper handling and storage are key to chemical fire prevention. Give special attention to chemicals that are flammable. Store flammable liquids in specially designed storage rooms or protective cabinets. Reactive chemicals are also a concern. Keep storage areas for oxidizers and reactive chemicals free of grease, oil, and other combustible contaminants. One class of chemicals that deserves special consideration is flammable liquids, such as gasoline or flammable solvents. The vapors of these chemicals are almost always heavier than air and can accumulate in low or enclosed areas with poor ventilation. When sufficient accumulation occurs, a simple heat source, such as a cigarette, an electrical spark, or a spark from hot work, can lead to instant ignition of a very dangerous and rapidly spreading fire. The storage, transfer, and handling guidelines found on safety data sheets should always be followed for flammable liquids. For example, flammable liquids create static electricity as they're poured. If this static builds up enough to spark, the vapors will ignite and cause a fire. Because of this, flammable liquids are required to be stored in approved containers, like metal safety cans. To remove static electricity when pouring flammable liquids, the container you pour from must be grounded with a wire connection. The receiving container must be electrically bonded with a wire connection to the container you pour from to complete the safe path to ground for the static. When flammable liquids are used in dipping or coating operations, there's often a fairly large surface area that evaporates fumes into the air. Dipping and coating operations can include cleaning and coating an object and draining or drying the wet object. Significant evaporation can also occur when using parts washers. OSHA has special rules for ventilation and containing the vapor during these activities. If your job involves dipping, coating, or washing using flammable liquids, be sure you understand the specific requirements for vapor capture or ventilation associated with your work area. And make certain that capture and ventilation systems are in good working order. Tanks of compressed and liquefied gases can represent significant fire and explosion hazards. Employees who work with gas cylinders must be trained in their proper use and handling. Compressed gases must be stored in a cool, dry, and well-ventilated space. They should be protected from the weather, kept away from flammable and incompatible materials, and safeguarded from potential ignition sources. The storage area for compressed gases should be clearly marked "No smoking." Cylinders that contain compressed gas or liquefied gas should always be stored in an upright position and firmly secured to walls or bench tops. When these cylinders are moved, they must never be dragged or rolled flat on their sides. Rolling on the bottom edge is acceptable for a short distance, but using a specialized handcart designed for moving gas cylinders is the safest approach. Keeping fuel cylinders and oxidizing gas cylinders separated is important in preventing fires and explosions. They must be separated by a firewall or kept at least 20 feet apart when in storage. Cylinders that contain oxygen must also be kept away from oil, grease, or other liquid flammables that could provide ready fuel for a fast-growing or explosive fire. And don't forget about fittings, connections, and gauges. Leaks in fittings and hoses can allow dangerous gases to escape. Then, an ignition spark is all that's needed to cause a catastrophic explosion. Applying a soap solution to connections and hoses is useful in detecting suspected leaks. Finally, never tamper with